So this is section 1. So here we cover the general aims of a literature review, its particular value, the overall stages that you undertake, and the role of critical thinking. So obviously a literature review is a body of knowledge that's been identified as being relevant to a particular topic or question or situation. And that situation could be multifaceted, and it could be guided by specific questions that need to be addressed within an organisational, policy, political, or academic situation. So we need to think about this context and what the factors or influences on this review are. What's its purpose? Because there's no generic purpose for a review. So it could be a particular policy context where the objective is to review policy issues, or it could be more specific or more general than that. So the review could focus very much on existing research, but also define what issues fall within the scope of it. And the whole process of doing a review is about that, is about scoping out what the key issues are to be addressed, what the purpose of it is, and within that what the gaps are, in knowledge, gaps in research, etc. So in other words, a literature review is defined by your own specific needs, and there's no one set format. So the process of doing a review is about the logical process you go through to identify your own personal or context-specific objectives for your review. So within that, what can a review do? So the first thing is that a review addresses very often key research questions or potentially dissertation objectives. It also tends to combine sources or types of information together. A review can be a starting point for research, so it could be a way of scoping out the realm of a topic or a dissertation before you define your research more clearly, or it could be the final outcome for your work. In other words, it can be extensive and detailed and the whole of the project or the dissertation, and that of course depends on what you're investigating, how you're investigating it, and what you're expecting at the end of this process. The risk of being repetitious, to just recap what was said previously, designing a literature review can be a process that focuses more and more clearly on what is of interest. So this can be a topic that has a place, a time, and a context of some kind. So what you're actually looking at is, who does this research focus on? Why does it focus on that? When does it occur in time and space? Where does it apply? Is it a location? Is it a country? Is it another type of context? And what kind of knowledge are you really mostly interested in? So this is a flexible process so that you can use your own literature review and skills to revise your research or dissertation objectives as you go along. It's often what we call iterative, which means you can revisit certain issues, go round a cycle of logic and thinking through what problem you're trying to solve, what you're actually trying to achieve. So for instance, you can take mixed approaches, or use different academic disciplines, or even an interdisciplinary approach. This is what we call methodology. So the methodology is the rationale for the kinds of methods in the research that you're looking at. So in essence, you need to focus on the kind of academic theory and material that is relevant to your research issues, the questions, the topics, and the objectives or objective. So of course you've got to make that clear to yourself before you can really proceed with a literature review. And that's the first thing to fundamentally understand about a literature review. So what does a review actually achieve in practice? What are the actual outcomes, if you like, from it that you want or expect? And how is it flexible? How is it framed? and where does the flexibility come in? So here we have a diagram of some of the potential logical and knowledge outcomes that you might get from a review, and it's not necessary to achieve all of these all of the time. So firstly, a review would aim to reveal what the key debates and controversies there were related to your research question, problem, or topic. Secondly, it might look for inconsistencies, material where there are contradictions or different approaches. So inconsistencies in existing knowledge, and explore what's already known. In doing that, it can look for unanswered questions, so gaps in knowledge and understanding related to your problem or your topic. And it would probably also explore, at the same time, some of the key concepts, theories, and research approaches that had already been developed in the context that you're working. So now we need to introduce to you the idea that there are actually different types of literature reviews for different purposes and different uses. The main two types, of course there are many variations within this, but the main two types are traditional reviews and systematic reviews. So firstly, with traditional reviews, we tend to summarise the findings of a body of knowledge within certain defined parameters. So for example, in the social sciences, we might be doing it to summarise everything that's related to a particular question or set of questions. So the main difference between that and a systematic review is that the second version, the systematic review, is much more structured and focused and approached in a more rigorous way, which is predefined. In other words, a systematic review spells out the whole process from the beginning. So with a traditional review, you might be able to change what you were doing and explore it in a different way and adjust. That's called iteration or iterative process. But a systematic review is much more structured. And this is for a specific reason, actually. I mean, mostly this happens in relation to medicine and science, particularly health sciences, where there's a very large body of knowledge that needs to be narrowed down and defined very clearly before summarising. Less so in more theoretical social sciences. But within, again, going back to medicine and medical sciences, a systematic review might focus on a type of technology, a set of health problems or symptoms, or ways of delivering services. So you can see that a systematic review would be slightly differently focused for a particular purpose. So people understand things in very different ways, of course, and they learn in very many different ways as well. But here we're trying to explain things to you in general terms, and then we'll introduce step by step the detail. But before we do that, I think it's very important to understand what critical thinking is and how it would be relevant to a literature review. So being critical in this particular context is far more than just repeating or summarising even what you've found. It means evaluating and contextualising and analysing the literature. So to explain what that actually means, critical thinking might focus on how to understand the historical and sociological context of the knowledge that you're looking at. In other words, where did this paper come from? Who wrote it? What period of time was it written in? Why did they approach it like that? Is it relevant to today? Is it relevant to my research questions? These sorts of approaches are sometimes called analytical and evaluative techniques, reflecting on research findings. So you're actually looking at what the paper says, why it says it, how it says it, but also linking that and understanding the context in which it's produced, because that's very relevant. Is it policy research? Is it academic research? Is it something else? So really critical thinking is about looking at different ways in which ideas are developed within literature and within research, and understanding how that happens and why. And finally, critical thinking embraces the definitions and the concepts, the types of languages that are used in research, the sorts of premises and assumptions that are made in particular bodies of work, whether that be a body of knowledge or specific research projects or even a whole academic or sub-academic discipline.